She fined me for hanging my grandfather's American flag, but she didn't know I had proof of her stealing HOA funds for years. By the end of it, I wasn't the one paying the price. It was Memorial Day weekend, the kind that makes you feel proud just to be breathing American air. I had just moved into my new suburban home in Whispering Pines, a neighborhood that looked like it had been pulled out of a glossy real estate brochure. Rows of manicured lawns, kids riding bikes, white picket fences, the dream. What made it special for me was that this home was bought with the inheritance my grandfather left behind. A proud veteran of World War II, he had always taught me to respect this country and the freedoms it stood for. Among the belongings he left me, the most treasured was his folded American flag, the one draped over his casket. I had it framed and ready to hang on my front porch. So on that warm Saturday morning, I carefully drilled a mount into the column and placed the flag high. It fluttered in the breeze, catching the sunlight just right. I stood there in silence, hand over heart, and then came her. "Excuse me." A shrill voice snapped me back to reality. A woman in her late 50s, bleach blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard in hand stumped toward me like she owned the pavement. "I'm Karen Lively, president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. I'm going to have to cite you for that flag." I blinked. "I'm sorry." She pursed her lips. "It's not regulation. No decorative additions to the exterior without prior approval. Page 12. Paragraph 4, subpoint B of the HOA bylaws." I tried to stay calm. "It's not a decoration. That's my grandfather's flag. He served in World War II. She shrugged. "Rules are rules. Remove it or face a $500 fine." The next day, a violation notice was taped to my door. I thought it was a joke. But neighbors warned me. Karen was no joke. She'd fine people for wind chimes, welcome mats, even sidewalk chalk. No one crossed her. I was advised to pay the fine and stay quiet. But that flag meant more to me than money. That day, I made a decision. If she wanted a war over a flag, she was about to find out she picked the wrong patriot. I wasn't going to rage. I was going to research. I started with the HOA handbook. That thing was thicker than a phone book, but I read every word. There it was, her cited regulation. But it didn't say anything about American flags. In fact, a federal law, the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005, explicitly protected my right. When I brought it up to Karen at the next HOA meeting, she laughed it off. "This is private property governed by community rules," she smirked. "You agreed to them when you moved in." That's when I noticed something odd. Karen seemed defensive, not just over the flag, but the meeting itself. She rushed through budget allocations, cut off any questions about spending, and shut down discussion when someone asked about the maintenance company's high fees. I left with more questions than answers. Enter Dave, my next-door neighbor. Quiet guy, glasses, ex-IT manager. When I told him what was happening, his eyes lit up. "You want to find out what she's hiding? Let's follow the money." Together, we began pulling records, public filings, tax reports, HOA financial summaries. Whispering Pines had thousands flowing through its account monthly, dues, fees, penalties, and a lot of it was going to a company called Greenscape Services. There was just one problem. Greenscape didn't exist online. No website, no business license, no Yelp reviews. That night, we found something else. Greenscape was registered to a man named Connor Lively, Karen's son. Once we had that link, the rest of the dominoes started falling. Greenscape Services wasn't just receiving payments, it was inflating them. What should have been $800 for monthly landscaping was billed at $3,200. And maintenance for the community pool? $9,000 during winter months when it was closed. We printed statements, screenshots, timelines, but we needed more. So Dave installed a dash cam on his mailbox post, aimed directly at the HOA drop box across the street. Within 2 weeks, we caught Karen pulling envelopes out late at night, well past collection hours. Then came the surveillance footage from her side gate, delivered by a resident 2 blocks over who'd installed a Ring camera after Karen fined him for improper garden gnomes. The footage showed Karen's son unloading tools from an unmarked van, working on HOA properties without identification or uniform. It was a shady operation, and Karen was a queenpin. But instead of confronting her directly, we decided to go public strategically. We started mailing anonymous packets to other residents. Inside, basic charts, comparisons of market rates versus HOA spending, and a few redacted images. Whispers turned into discussions. Discussions turned into accusations. Karen, sensing the walls closing in, got more aggressive. She fined a 70-year-old woman for having overgrown ivy that barely crossed the fence. She tried pushing an emergency rule banning outside communications regarding HOA matters. And then someone vandalized my car. Coincidence? I didn't think so. I filed a police report. And I filed everything else in a giant binder I labeled Operation Freedom. It was time. The next HOA meeting was set for the third Thursday of the month. Usually, 5 or 6 people showed. That night, 4 to 7 showed up. I had mailed everyone personalized invitations, copies of our findings, and a promise. Come see where your money really goes. Karen looked pale the moment she entered. Her usual confidence wilted as she saw residents holding binders. I stood and took the floor. Calmly, professionally, I laid it all out. Every dollar, every invoice, every fake name and shell company, every video clip of her son doing unauthorized work, every maintenance report that didn't match reality. She tried to interrupt. I showed emails she sent denying flag rights. She denied the son connection. I showed business registry documents. The room exploded. One man demanded refunds. A mother yelled that her daughter's playground had been broken for a year while Karen bought herself new patio furniture. Karen screamed, "This is slander." A voice from the back replied, "No, it's justice." The HOA board, most of whom had been clueless, called for an emergency vote. Karen was suspended on the spot. And then the cops arrived. Turns out, they had submitted our findings to the district attorney. They found enough probable cause to open a fraud investigation. Karen left in handcuffs. The weeks that followed were surreal. Karen was officially charged with embezzlement, fraud, and obstruction. Her son faced charges too. Their assets were frozen. Their house was put up for sale to cover restitution. The HOA board, now under interim leadership, asked me to join. I declined full-time, but agreed to help rewrite the HOA charter, starting with a clause protecting patriotic displays. And the flag? It still hangs proudly on my porch, now protected by HOA policy and federal law. Neighbors began holding community BBQs again. The vibe in Whispering Pines changed from fear to fellowship. People waved more, talked more. One afternoon, I stood outside with my son, watching the flag flutter. "Why did she want to take it down?" he asked. I smiled, because sometimes people who crave control fear symbols they can't command. But in America, we don't bow to bullies. He looked up. "So you won?" "No," I said. "We all did."